Hey Gearheads, welcome back to the Addicted to Gear show where we dive deep into all things guitar and gear related. I'm Tony and today we're going to be talking about a guitar that has a vibe and a style all its own, the Epiphone Firebird. Now before we dive into this Epiphone review, let's rewind the clock a bit and talk about the original Gibson Firebird. The Firebird was first introduced by Gibson in 1963 and was designed by Ray Dietrich, an automotive designer of all things. That's why the guitar's unique shape and sleek lines feel a little bit like something you'd see on a classic car commercial from the 60s. The Firebird was Gibson's attempt to compete with the success of Fender's offset guitars, and it quickly gained a following for its edgy design and unique tone. So here's a little known fact: the Firebird was the first Gibson guitar to feature mini humbuckers, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but these pickups were originally developed by Epiphone, which Gibson acquired in 1957. So it's kind of like the Firebird brought together the best of both worlds. Pretty cool. First off, let's talk about the radical design. The reverse body shape of the Firebird is one of the most distinctive features of this guitar. It's edgy, it's bold, and it has that vintage vibe, but it's not for everyone. Some love it, some not so much. So make sure you're into that elongated, futuristic style because this isn't your average guitar shape. Now, another stand-up feature of this guitar design is the reverse headstock. This is an iconic Firebird feature. It really makes the guitar stand out. But here's the thing. It actually makes your low E string much longer than normal. So this can actually affect the string tension, giving the low notes a slightly different feel compared to other guitars. While we're talking headstocks, let's not ignore the fact that the Firebird headstock is massive. It's much bigger than what you'd find on most guitars like a Strat or a Les Paul. Now, because of its size, it can feel a little clunky. It can make the guitar feel a little awkward, especially when you're playing on stage and you're not accustomed to the size of this guitar. It gives the guitar a bolder look, but it can be a bit awkward, especially in tight spaces. I, for one, have already knocked over a few things with this headstock. What are you gonna do? Now, the Firebird has a neck-through construction, which is great for sustain and stability. The neck runs all the way through the entire body, giving you more resonance and a smooth feel when transitioning between the frets. But on the flip side, if you ever need to repair or adjust the neck, it could be much more challenging than with a bolt-on. Another thing you may want to consider with this guitar is nosedive. A lot of people mention nosedive when talking about a Firebird guitar because they feel like the long body and larger headstock can throw off the center of gravity. I really don't find it's that bad with the strap. I mean, the guitar seems fine to me if you have a proper strap on. I think you might feel the nosedive a little more when you're sitting with the guitar on your lap just because of the way the guitar is made. So that might be a little bit more concerning. I don't really feel the standing up position is an issue at all. So it really depends on you. I think it's best to try it before you buy it. While we're talking about dive, let's dive into the mini humbuckers that come with the Epiphone Firebird. These aren't your typical full-size humbuckers like you'd find in a Les Paul or an SG. Mini humbuckers are a total different beast. They're smaller, they're more compact, and they deliver a totally different tonal experience. They're actually made differently as well. As opposed to using pole pieces, they actually have a bar magnet that goes across them. So they do sound quite a bit different. They have their own thing going on. Now, unlike full-size humbuckers, which are known for a thicker, warmer sound, and let's face it, sometimes humbuckers can get muddy, the mini humbuckers are brighter and they're more focused. So the sound tends to be a little bit more on the upper end of the tonal spectrum. They retain the hum canceling qualities of a humbucker that we all love, but they lean closer towards the clarity and punch of a single coil. So if you're transitioning from a single coil guitar like a Strat to this guitar, you might not feel so out of your element. I really like them. The mini humbuckers in the Firebird give you a sharp, punchy attack, which is great if you're playing rock or blues or anything that you need to cut through the mix. If the mix is dense, these will definitely help you out. They are articulate, meaning that every note in your chord comes through clearly, which is something that you don't always get with a full-size humbucker, depending on how they're wound and who makes them. But these pickups help you cut through the mix, and you find yourself struggling a little less in a band situation. Now, if you're chasing that fat, beefy tone you typically expect from a humbucker, you may find these pickups a little too bright, little too clean. So if you love crisp, detailed tones with a little bit more high-end bite, which I like, these pickups will deliver. Now, one thing to keep in mind, sometimes these guitars can be a little on the heavier side, especially compared to something like a Strat or a Telecaster. The weight on this guitar is not insane, but if you're doing long sets or long practices, it could start to wear on you a little bit. This guitar comes in just under 9 pounds, so it's not heavy at all. It fits right into the same weight categories as some of my other guitars. One thing I really like about Firebird guitars are the gearless tuners. Now, the Epiphone model does not come with gearless tuners. It comes with standard tuners that are flipped the other way. They could be a little tricky to get familiar with, but if you have a 3-3 configuration like on a Les Paul style guitar, you're halfway there anyway. The interesting thing though is that in this model, the strings are not absolutely straight. They do tilt down a little bit, while the older headless gear model were sporting straight string break right after the nut, which I think makes for better tuning stability. Now, because of its longer body shape, the Firebird can feel a little awkward when you're sitting down with it. I always find myself trying to anchor it down with my elbow when I'm playing sitting down. It's just because the center of gravity is in a different place. So if you're used to playing more standard type guitars, this can be an issue for you. If you're a stand-up player and you're not sitting down much, it won't bother you. But if you tend to play your guitar sitting down a lot, then you might want to consider what I'm pointing out here. As you can see, if we compare this to a standard Les Paul style, the Firebird has a few extra inches on the headstock over the traditional Les Paul. So you will need a bigger case too. Just keep that in mind. One thing that people don't usually mention about the Firebird is the fact that they're very finicky when it comes to guitar stands. If you have a standard guitar stand that holds the guitar at the bottom and holds the neck with the little gripper, they usually will slide off. So you really need something that will typically hold the guitar up here off the ground. So that's another thing to consider if you already have some guitar stands lying around and expect to use this with one of those. Now, if you're jumping into the world of Firebird guitars and you already own an SG, you might feel a little bit more comfortable with the guitar because the thickness of the body is quite thin. It's about the same thickness, I would say, as a typical SG guitar. And the knobs here are also clustered together in the same way and in the same location as an SG. So you'll be familiar when you're going to grab the knobs here if you already have an SG guitar. The difference is this: the switch, it's not typically down here like you would have on a Les Paul or an SG, so that will take a little bit of getting used to, but it's no big deal in my opinion. I think that is probably a better place for it anyway. One thing I've noticed about Epiphone guitars in general is that the necks do feel a little bit beefier. I think they have a little bit more shoulder on them than the Gibson counterpart. So, you know, it would be great to be able to have something a little bit more similar to the Gibson necks, but you know, it is what it is. That being said, the neck still is very comfortable. If you have medium-sized hands, you shouldn't have any issues. The nut on the guitar is not bone, it's plastic. It would have been nice to have a bone nut. I do prefer bone nuts in my opinion. You can easily upgrade that if you wish, but it's not critical because the guitar does stay in tune quite nicely. In terms of the finish on this guitar, I really like the fact that they do offer the guitar in a transparent finish where you can see the wood grain. I think it makes guitar look a lot more expensive than it is. You do have the tummy tucks here, but I like the fact that you can see the different wood types down the neck. And the fact that it is a one-piece neck like this really makes it look sexy, in my opinion. I don't see any issues with it at all, especially at the neck joint, being that this guitar is a neck through design. That's quite important. I wish they would offer the guitar in different colors. There's a lot of really, really nice colors that are based off of the old classic car colors that I think are really nice. Gibson is holding those for their own guitars, and they're not actually putting them on many Epiphone models. I think there's only one other Epiphone model that has a different color, but it's a one pickup configuration. So if you like two pickups, you're kind of stuck with this one for now till they release a few more, and I hope that's coming soon. Now, there is some confusion as to where the Epiphone models are being made these days. This is a made in China model, so if you don't like Chinese guitars for whatever reason, you might want to stay away from this one. But honestly, I don't have any concerns about buying guitars that are made in China as long as they're well built, and this one seems to be very well built. For what you're getting, the Epiphone Firebird is priced quite competitively right now. It's not a budget guitar, but it's also not going to break the bank compared to a Gibson Firebird. So if you're after that iconic Firebird look and sound and feel and tone without dropping serious cash, then the Epiphone version is a solid choice, and you should definitely check it out. So there you have it, folks. 10 things to consider before picking up an Epiphone Firebird. This is a killer guitar with a lot to offer. If you don't already have a Firebird, consider it. It doesn't do anything like the other guitars do. It really has its own tone, its own style, its own mojo. But like with any instrument, it's not for everyone. It does have its own quirks. So make sure you know what you're getting into before you actually take the plunge. Now, what do you guys think? Have any of you guys played the Firebird yet, or is it on your wish list? Drop me a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the guitar, what I presented here. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss out on the latest Addicted to Gear reviews, demos, and gear talk. Your support helps keep the content coming, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. That's it for today, folks. See you on the next one.